All right.
We want to bang out some of the short topics first, and then we can dive in.
Sure. 16914. What is that?
I think it's probably the search type search. By now.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually pushed this forward a little bit the other day. It was still needs in progress for writing up the spec. I feel like we're ready for this. We've been ready for it for a while. There's been a lot of bugs that get raised in all the different views in the app that are related to this, and so we're constantly just kind of saying, oh yeah, it's going to get fixed when we do this. It's going to get fixed when we do this. So I think we should do it sooner rather than later, but I'm not sure if we need to know anything else going into this.
I don't know anything about it, so.
And so basically, we're, for the search bar, we need to debounce the user typing, so the model's not updating and we're not querying the backend. And what basically can happen is if you type really fast, you might have 2 or 3 queries going through at the same time, and then you kind of get an unpredictable order of completion that eventually populates the page in a way that can be strange.
Hard to do here because I'm local, but if you go on like a slower tiny, you can produce it pretty easily.
No, I understand it. My question is why is there any concern other than debouncing?
Yeah, so even with the debouncing, if the request still takes longer than the debounce rate, then it is still possible to get to basically have an unpredictable order of operations. It's going to be a lot less. I mean, the debouncing is going to solve 90% of the problems, but in some scenarios, the bug could still exist if we don't figure out how to basically cancel the previous request when the next one starts. So we can reliably know that the last thing that the user actually typed that gets sent to the model is the thing that's getting sent to the server, which ultimately is what updates the view.
Isn't that pretty straightforward, though?
I mean, it is, yeah. And I think this was, just a couple of days ago, this was still marked as needs definition. And so I pressed the button to say ready for estimation. So I think we're in good shape there. So yeah, I guess, I don't know who added this to the Trello board, but if there's any UI resources that are looking for something, we may want to get this prioritized. And I've added a Legion flag with the hope potentially that we can get this groomed tomorrow with our weekly grooming. But if anybody else thinks that they've got a grooming session sooner and you have UI resources, let's see if we can get this estimated and into the pipeline relatively quickly. Just been one of those things that's been lingering about long enough, and I think we're all tired of seeing those bugs get raised.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
80 or height? Oh, okay, for brackets here.
A little bit of a lag here.
Oh, sorry, I'm not looking at it. Oh, why is there that much of a lag? There it is. There we go.
This just came up in a PR. Do we care enough to set a JSCS rule, or does it not matter?
Is this for everything within a bracket?
Yeah, it would be for kind of inline object.
Inline options, yeah.
I mean, I agree that it's more readable with the spaces. I'm not sure I care strongly enough to enforce it through JSCS.
That's how I feel. If we feel strongly enough, then fine. We can do it during our rebuilding thing right now, since we're doing JSCS changes anyway. That's why I added it now versus later. Or if we don't care, then we just leave it and leave it up to personal preference.
Do you remember who raised this in the PR? Was it Adrian?
Yeah, that was. So it's only styling thing, not that I want it to be enforced, but it looks better with the spacing. That's all.
Yeah, like I said, we're redoing the build right now and updating all the JSCS rules. So if it's something you want, let's do it now.
Does anybody disagree that the space adds more clarity? So it sounds like this is something that let's go ahead and do it. I think we all kind of agree that the space is nicer. We're in a pretty good place to pretty easily add this in.
All right, I'll make a task on our open story right now, Kai.
So I guess for the UI build, the UI build is going to be released in PC12 P1. So right now we're pretty much done with development and testing. So it's kind of on hold. We're just waiting for the green light to go ahead and start merging it. There are 5 or 6 different repositories that are getting updates from this story. It's been a long time coming, but I think we finally ironed out all the kinks and we're ready to go with it. So, general idea behind it is to replace the WRO delivery system of our JavaScript and styles and all of the stuff that kind of relates to the front end views. And basically replace it with a more modern NPM build. And for that, we're using Gulp to kind of tap into some of the power that Gulp brings and reduce a little bit of the complexity. If we were trying to do it with NPM scripts, it probably would be possible, but it would also probably add some complexity. So basically, the WRO XML files, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up that UI. We still have the WRO.xml to define, to define our bundles, but the WRO Maven plugin is not actually reading this. We're actually parsing this in our gulp streams to be able to concatenate all of these files together and create the resulting output. One of the main benefits we have with this is that first load of a freshly built server or local instance doesn't have the lag. WRO used to basically the first request, it would do all of the uglification kind of dynamically at that time. So there was always this extra lag, and it actually caused all sorts of automation problems, timeouts, and whatnot. So there's this, the automation ended up kind of adding a warm-up phase to just get certain pages that have long initial load times to get kind of warmed up and be ready for testing. But that's going to be unnecessary now. The resulting, I mean, we're minifying in the build during the build, and when the files are then requested, they're basically just static assets ready to go. And we actually see an even a smaller improvement in that every request doesn't have to go through the WRO anymore. So there's just kind of one less step along the pipeline to slow things down and add latency. So I've seen the app just, even locally, the app just feels a little snappier, even after the pages have loaded. So there are some good performance benefits that we're seeing with this overall. The way we kind of went about this, though, was the other goal here was to kind of unify all of our front-end build code in one place. So within the one repository, there's now a one front-end build directory, and this directory is essentially an npm package that we publish to our private Nexus AZ npm repository, and then all of our UI packages just have this. Pretty much, this is the only dependency that they have, and it provides a whole stack of tasks and whatnot that are consistent throughout. So if we ever need to update versions or anything like that, we will update it in one front-end build, and then the only thing we would need to do is just bump versions once we test out kind of those updates within like One UI or JuSite UI or Tagger Analytics UI, etc. So we've, the other benefit here is we've just centralized all of this code that used to be scattered all over the place that we'd have to kind of manage and maintain in all sorts of different places, and we've consolidated in one place. This also includes the JS CS rules and the JS hint rules. We're basically inheriting the rules from this one front-end build package within each of the local JSC SRC and JS NRC files. So we get some streamlining there as well, so more consistency across the board. I don't know how far in we want to dive, but is there anything in particular with the build that people want to see? We are going to be sending out links to some wiki entries that we made around this, and also kind of how people can get up to date with their local environments to be able to work with this. But does anybody have any curiosity about some things under the hood in particular?
Not necessarily under the hood, but associated with the automation side of things. So yeah, some of these improvements are going to impact how long specific stories take to run, and some of the grouping of the stories. Is there anything as part of that MMF to rebalance the parallel so that if it does change, the balancing of how long each of the 5 different runs take, that there isn't one that is now holding up everything for an extra hour or so?
We hadn't really considered that. We've run a lot of parallel automation against this story, and I don't think there's been any significant change in the balancing. I think all of the stories have kind of benefited across the board, and the improvements are relatively synchronous. That said, I mean, we haven't looked at it on that level, and that may be something that we can look at or have a follow-up story on to see if some rebalancing needs to be done.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point.
Kai, maybe you could just give a quick update on some of the profile changes that we made in Maven.
Yeah, that's. I think that would be useful. So another bit of this story was to update each of the POMs with more consistent build profiles. So they all use the one front end build tasks, and we've updated and changed some of the profile flags that we're used to using. So previously we had a skip JS tests and the other one. I can't remember the other one. But we now have 3 profiles. We deliberately renamed them just so it's clear that this is kind of a departure from where we were. But if we look at these profiles, we've got the first one is a dev mode profile, which essentially skips some of the aggressive cleaning done by the Maven Clean plugin. So you're basically not rebuilding your the node module install from the servers. It's basically assuming that you've already done that. So your npm build is going to be it'll still get updated, but it won't necessarily have to install anything new because your files will already have been there. And then there's also, so instead of doing npm install, we just do an npm update. So if there were any package updates or whatnot, you will at least get those. But it avoids kind of the full rebuilding that production builds will typically be going through. So most of the time, your local builds, you'll probably want to use the new dev mode using that ddev flag. And again, this is all documented on the wiki, and we're going to be sending an email out with this information as well on how to get updated and get started with this stuff. If for some reason you run into like some sort of npm error during the build, you probably want to try just rebuilding without the dev mode flag. You may have something that is kind of out of sync or out of phase, and without the dev mode flag, you're going to get a deep cleaning of your node modules directory and a fresh install, which will probably free up whatever issues you may be seeing. The other new profile is a skip UI test. It's basically the same as the skip.js test was. We're just ignoring the running of gulp test. We did extract gulp into a variable for a node build tool, so we'll be flexible. The runtime SDK still uses grunt, so that was one of the main reasons here. But if for some reason down the line we had other packages that wanted to use just npm scripts or something like that, that we could just swap this out, so we would just run the npm test and still be able to use the same profile without modification.
Is there anything that will say skip npm updates as well? So let's say you either lose internet connectivity or just don't even care about cleaning and re-updating from npm. Is there a profile that you can say just skip all the JS stuff?
Well, yeah, so the dev mode is kind of that way. npm update is not nearly as aggressive as npm install. The concern is if you are offline, an npm install, if you have all of the node modules already, npm update will be a no-op. But if you don't have all the node modules already, then the build is going to fail, and there's really nothing to do about that because you're going to need those files to be able to do the rest of the build anyway. So even if you were offline and you didn't have the packages, the front end build wouldn't be able to do anything. If you need to, I'm not sure skipping the entire front end build is.
Well, the issue usually comes in when you're trying to do a clean on the Java side, but it automatically picks up the clean of the UI. So
yeah, the clean of the UI doesn't actually install anything. So if you do just a Maven clean, there won't be any front end failures with that.
All right, maybe I need to sync up with you, but what I've noticed is if I do, let's say I'm doing some Java development on the services, something THX side of the services. If I do a Maven clean install on Juice site and I have this skip.js and skip everything else, and I don't have connectivity to npm or npm is down, then the build bombs out.
Yeah, I mean,
Want this up at that point?
say that again?
Rob, in your case, have you already built and started up your site once?
Yep.
Then doing DDev, you'll be fine because, like Kai said, update's not going to go out and look for it. It's only if you wiped out your node modules, and DDev won't wipe them out.
And what I'm saying is, I believe the MVN clean install on site, even with those profiles, will wipe out the
No,
npm directory.
it won't.
Yeah, not anymore. That's what the DDEV profile is designed to skip.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like I said, most of the time, the DDEV profile, when you're building locally, is going to be used. I would probably say 90% of your builds should just use the DDEV profile unless there's an issue. The reason we added it as a profile was just to ensure that production builds are clean. So our dev builds, just assume some basic setup has already been done, and redoing that every single time is just kind of time consuming and kind of a waste of everyone's time. So yeah, we also so we had the skip UI tests, and then the other profile that we added was an ignore UI lint, which basically just skips running of the linting check of the front end code. It used to be that the skip.js tests would skip the entire kind of validation run, which included both testing and linting in it. And there are some scenarios where what you're really looking to do is get, if you want to make sure that your tests are still passing, but maybe there was a linting error or something like that, we want to skip that. We split them out separately, but I think most people will have their profiles aliased anyway. So we wanted to make these flags available as kind of separate runs. So we could still run tests, but if somebody got blocked by a stupid linting error or something like that, they could just ignore that. And these profiles are available for every UI project, and that includes adaptive UI, analytics UI, site UI, Tagger, the runtime CRM, the runtime SDK, and One UI. So they're all going to have the same profiles. They're all running off of this one front-end build. So hopefully, once we get used to the changes, then it'll be pretty seamless to transition over to other projects that we may be less familiar with around. Well, any other thoughts, JT, Jake?
I think it would be nice to demo browser sync and the source maps, because I mean source maps is one of Jaime's biggest complaints, and showing how that works, that'd be nice to see if we can.
Yeah, I can do that. Let me just get servers up real quick. So we did replace live reload with browser sync. And so we can actually now tap into the live reload functionality on any browser. We don't have to be dependent on the live reload plugin that's available for Chrome. So that there's some benefit there. Also, the one thing that browser sync brings to the table that live reload does not is the ability to have multiple windows open, and if they're all tapped into the same browser sync, the events in one window will be propagated to the other windows. So if you need cross-browser testing, you can have an Internet Explorer window open, a Firefox window open, and a Chrome window open. You could even have an Android window open. They could all be on different machines if you want. And as long as they're all tapping into the same browser sync server, as you scroll and as you click, those events will be propagated across all the browsers. So it actually really improve some workflow for some cross-browser testing, that kind of thing.
I have a question. Will you be able to launch in dev mode from analytics with live reload, or not live reload, this thing we have implemented, and from THX at the same time, and do changes on both of them and have the page reload?
Yes, I believe so. I haven't fully tested that, but browser sync is a little smarter. Live reload basically locked you into a specific port.
Yeah.
It's still a little awkward to have both like One UI and Site UI running at the same time because uh, the browser sync files basically are being injected onto the page to be able to tap into our servers. So, but I think it is possible. It hasn't been something that I've completely looked at. But it's what's really easy. What's easier to do now though is to run gulp dev on THX, and then if you're doing work on One UI, just run gulp dev on One UI. You can kind of hot swap them out, and the browser sync will pick up the different servers as you go. My screen cam. Okay, so just got my browsers up, and well, I should share my whole screen. Sorry. All right. Okay, just got my browsers up. So one thing that we added, wait for now. We go ahead and make our minify, turn our minify off. You'll notice we don't actually inject anymore the ng stats on the page at all. Where it used to be injected, it just wasn't exposed without the one minify. So in production, we never had the ng stats library coming in. So we tapped into some of that as well. We also don't have browser sync for minification versions right now. If that's something that we find that we could use down the line, then we can look into adding it. But there's basically the way we're doing browser sync is the script gets injected on the page for us. I'll show you that here. If I turn off minification, refresh the page. There's where's the thing here? Oh, we see the ng stats. Yeah, there it is. So it's injected through. It's basically it's expecting to find it at localhost 3000. And you'll see we still do have the HTTPS issue. I'm trying to figure out my local on Linux machines for some reason doesn't get the proper security certificate. And I actually, up until a week or two ago, I was seeing that on my Mac as well. So we may actually be able to get rid of this stuff. But there's still this little flag here. If we want to use it, we can turn on browser syncing by clicking that shield to get past the HTTPS. So to get started, you go to whichever directory you want to be in, and you just run gulp dev. In order to speed up the processing of the files, it does do a quick build to get ready the first time, but now you can see BS is watching files, so that's browser sync. And over here, we would just load the unsafe scripts. And now we're connected. And you'll see up in the upper right when it'll let you know when browser sync is connected there. So let's see. We want to take actions, for example. So So if we go into the lets first, go ahead and just say the actions container, the border of 20 pixels, pink. And so we'll see over here, it rebuilt only the actions because we know the actions less file change to rebuild the CSS and then pushes that CSS out. Now when we come back to the page, it's ready to go in pink, which is beautiful. If we didn't want that, just take that out, save it again, and we see the instant updates there. On the other side, if we go to actions.js, and we just want to say, I'll just do debugger or something like that. I'll throw a debugger statement in there. It'll refresh the page, and now the debugger is there. Take that out. And so it's doing basically incremental builds. It's only changing what we get. Okay. So you see just actions.js is built. You'll see this build properties task go through. And essentially, as part of this, because our I18N files have FMT tags in them, and we're no longer pumping that through the WRO, there was basically nothing to swap out those FMT tags with the property that they're representing. So our front-end build actually parses now the property stack and goes ahead and does that replace for us in the I18N files. HTML is still piped through the JSP processor, so they get those full, they get the replacements through the JSP. But we are right now swapping out the I18N stuff through the build process.
Can you show the source maps?
I'm sorry, say again?
Can you show the source maps now?
Yep. And so with this, we've got minification on, or sorry, minification off. And now if we want to look at code sources, you remind me if I'm looking in the wrong place, but
What's that?
yeah, that's one. We're looking at THDC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
New module actions. And then there's source on below that.
Ah, yeah, there it is. That's recently changed. So,
then there's a source map detected.
yeah. So when module actions comes in, it does give us the source maps through the build, which is exposed. I believe in Chrome, you still have to have source map settings on to say use source maps.
Yeah, go back to your source page. Up at the top, there's a little icon. Do more.
Here.
Nope. Inside your mainframe. More.
More.
Then you can do show. Yeah. So file tree. You can debug these results. No, hold on. You read it. What it was saying is you can put your debugger on the resolved files versus in the big file.
I think it also works the other way around. So if I'm in module actions and I put my debugger on this var my, it actually pops me over to the source. It put the debugger on the source file. It's a little hard to see, but you can see. I'll go down to one constants, which is on line 377 here. If I put the debugger on it, it pops me over to. It actually puts the debugger on the source itself now. So now if I refresh the page, when it hits the debugger, I'm on the source file. I'm not actually on the
aggregate. or the concat version.
Yeah. So we have, yeah, and here this is just the actions controller.
Now the big thing is if you select that line, I think you can say show me the source map. Try that again.
Select which line?
Yeah, so select that line and go to debugger. So now I think the big thing is you want to see which file that's coming from. Right click on the debugger. I forget how to jump.
It tells me.
Oh, okay.
So it automatically puts me in actions.js rather than whatever was here, module action. This is kind of a simplified module. Let me find something a little more complicated. Actions edit is any more complicated. Actions edit, yeah, there's all sorts of things here. So if I wanted to look at, if I had a debugger thing on the assets filter here, and like if you put that in the assets filter code, or if you're looking for something in particular, you'll see which file specifically to go to, rather than having it be the full built out.
Yeah, they just changed the view from what I'm used to. Then that's what I remember.
Yeah, no, they just did that to me too. So I'm looking at this. The Chrome tools over in the left-hand corner look a little bit different than what I've been used to with source maps. So yeah, I mean, you can find any of the sources that have been loaded onto the page pretty nicely now. On the file that you're looking for, and you can actually step through properly. And I know Chris had asked about that as well. So
yeah,
should make some of the harder debugging moderately easier.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so with this, we should be able to also be able to debug inside the IntelliJ if we wanted to, correct?
I'm pretty sure that would work. Not really the right person to ask about IntelliJ stuff. That's fine.
I have no clue.
I'll give it a try.
All right.
The one thing is, we do still have we still have the validate task. It's just not actually being run during the build. So if developers need to make sure that there's no lint and there's no test failures, it will go ahead and tell us that. We've got to maybe find some sort of progress indicator for linting. And so the THX tests are now grouped back together. We don't have those three separate tasks because we don't need to worry about the stack overflows that were caused in earlier versions of NPM and Node. So if you want to just tap into the specific test that you're using, using the fdescribe or fit to focus on those. You know, but I don't think if there's anything else.
do we get the cat still?
No. So yeah, there was. So I was looking at the different reporters for testing, and I actually ran across. There's a Karma Nyan Cat reporter, which I'll show you an example of it here. And it's kind of awesome. It's great for like a single test run. One downside is that if you're skipping tests and you've got like 3,000 tests as we do in THX, there is still a little bit of a lag because it's updating that skip number as it's animating. So it's a little slow in that sense. But the reporting is kind of nice on it. What I realized that under the hood, it's just using the Karma Mocha reporter. So what we've basically integrated into the one front end build is the Karma Mocha reporter. So we still get the nice reporting, we just don't get the fun Rainbow Cat. And the other thing that the Rainbow Cat kind of does is when you're testing with the test auto task, it had a tendency to kind of break the output, which is ultimately why I think we really need to move away from it. I found that when there were errors being thrown on subsequent runs, the rainbow was kind of everywhere, and it kind of disrupted the way the SD out was rendering in the client, which kind of was problematic. But it was fun for a few days seeing this little cat run around. The other thing is it doesn't have good continuous integration support. So when this actually rendered in the bamboo logs, it was just a hot mess and would add thousands of lines of cat that wasn't really even understandable as being a cat. So it was bloating the logs in an unnecessary way. But it is kind of fun, and if you have very simple projects or whatnot, this NAM reporter is actually quite useful for single test runs. But the auto tests are a little flaky.
I will say some things in terms of that we ran over that I want to say going forward. FMT tags, single quotes for the strings, double quotes for the FMT keys and messages. You can't. I know the browsers allowed us to get away with single quotes all the way through, but if I see it on the PR, I'm gonna knock that. The other thing is any sort of interpolation. Please stop putting them in multiple strings together and using interpolate directly. Build it out, and then interpolate over it. It makes it a real pain. And no markup in strings, please, to be interpolated over. I'm gonna if I see that on a PR, I'm gonna ask to have it changed too. So.
Yeah. So one of the issues that we were running into was this type of scenario where we've got an HTML attribute that uses double quotes, and then the JSP tag that uses double quotes. We're piping the HTML through a minifier through the build process, and the FMT tags are valid when they go through the JSP processor, but this happens before it hits the JSP. So the HTML processor sees the double quote and then sees the next double quote, and then everything else after it is garbage, and so it kind of blows up. So if you are working on HTML and you happen to see that your builds are failing, it's likely, especially if you've been working with FMT tags and adding some attributes and whatnot, just make sure that the double quotes, if you're using double quotes for the HTML attribute, then make sure you use the single quote for the key. Keeps the minifier happy and is somewhat more accurate, although the JSP doesn't really seem to care. And ultimately, what ends up in the browser is we never see what happens within the FMT. So, but yeah, you will get some very angry output from the HTML minifier if you break that rule. And to Justin's point about the I18N, I don't think there's an example in analytics, but to his point about the I18N stuff, we found, I think, 2 or 3 files where the I18N string definitions were not just simple FMT tags, they were actually kind of concatenated strings with even some interpolation kind of built in. That will no longer function because the I18N tags are doing a very simple kind of parse and replace of the FMT tags. So we really want just a one-to-one mapping of the constants for the I18N, and then do the concatenation and aggregation as you need to within the service or within the controller that is using those strings. Otherwise, the replacement really doesn't work, and bad things happen. And then it becomes a late night of fixing interpolation strings. So yeah, like I said, we've got, I think there are 2 wiki articles around this. One is geared towards backend developers, basically what they need to know, how to get set up. One is geared towards the kind of in-depth dive of what the one front-end build is, and all of the different tasks that are available. And then once this actually starts to get merged in, which as soon as this next cut is made, I believe will be on PC12P1. So basically, once we're ready to start merging things for PC12P1, this will be one of the first things to go in, and it'll end up on master, and we'll be sure to send an email out at that time. Don't ignore that email, because once this goes in, it will break a lot of things for you if you're not if your environment isn't up to speed, and some of the things haven't been done yet. So be aware of that, but we will try to get all of that information out to you at an accurate time. It's going to be a little awkward because there are so many branches that this will probably take a few hours to fully merge over. So we may also be asking for some downtime during that window. Any other questions right now?
Cool. 3 minutes to spare.
Nice. Are we still doing every other week?
Yeah, so it'll be something.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, cool. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See you later.